This is from Jack K. White II at GJackX. Arcade games or console games, either apply here. When you are reminded of certain ones, which ones bring back the nostalgic feels, like take you back to where you were, who you were with,
man.
give you literal goosebumps? Pat and Rolling Thunder.
What's great about arcade games is that you usually remember where you first were, where you played them. There was just a feeling like when you saw an arcade or a game, it's sort of tied to the environment, at least in my head.
Sure.
So that's why I get the most nostalgic for arcade games, like more than console. Console's like, yeah, I remember the first time I played Atari Warriors, I was disappointed on Christmas playing it, after Super Mario Brothers. You kind of remember that. But for an arcade game, like I can tell you the first time I played APB
Okay.
was at the Perth Amboy Cineplex, right next to when they used to have the Razzmatazz. Remember Razzmatazz?
No.
Razzmatazz was like the regional sort of like Chuck E. Cheese. They had the animatronic band.
Yes, we had Major Magics.
Same sort of thing. There's people that now take the old Razzmatazz
I know.
and they restore them to get them back to where they were. It's awesome that someone's doing that. Anyway, so the Perth Amboy multiplex, that was at a time where most movie theaters, God, if you're young, now I sound old. Most movie theaters 25 years ago were like 2 screens, maybe 3. It wasn't until like the mid to late 90s you had, first there were Sony theaters, then they became Lowe's. Then you had these huge destination sites that had like 20 screens where you could see every single movie. It wasn't like that.
No.
Very few places like that. But the Perth Amboy one was like, oh my God, there's like 15 different movies. They had them, this is not even LED screen. They would put the letters up. A guy would go on a ladder and put the letters up. And you would see every single movie and the times they were playing. So it was a multi-leveled place. So the arcade at Perth Amboy wasn't like all together. It was spread out above the whole floor, and on the wings is where you had the theaters. So I remember specifically like walking over. My dad gave me $5. We get there an hour early. My dad gave me $3-4 in quarters, sometimes $5 if he was feeling nice because he threw away my Marky Stevens clothes. And I would play APB. I remember where it was. I remember playing POW. I remember specifically those were the first times I played was that Amboy Cinema. I remember playing Rolling Thunder at the bowling alley. I know it was right next to the Road Blasters machine. I remember these things. I remember them being there and getting my ass kicked. When I was 8 years old, I probably couldn't get past the first level of Rolling Thunder. Probably couldn't, or got close and got killed. I remember playing Spy Hunter at Spaceport at Woodbridge Center. In the Dungy arcade, went all the way back. It was an arcade,
Tony Dungy or Dingy?
But it was one of those sort of. I think Spaceport was sort of like the other spacey arcade. They were chains, kind of.
Yeah.
The Spy Hunter cockpit version was at the very back. My dad let me there by myself, even though he shouldn't. There were some nefarious people around in 1985 at the arcade, but I remember sitting down and playing it. Like, you remember these sights and sounds. I remember my dad playing Operation Wolf, seeing him, shoot the Uzi and things. So all of these remind me of something. This is part of nostalgia. You go back in time feeling where you were at a certain time period. You sort of had that feeling of when you first played it, it's like a drug almost. You get that serotonin injection about, I remember being happy, innocent, plucking in quarters in the machine. So that to me is more than console. It's always going to be arcade games for me. Like those are the feelings I have because they're usually tied to other experiences. You're out of the house, you're at the mall, you're at the bowling alley, usually kids party, things like that.
Yeah, I agree. For me, there are 2 arcade games that, the Star Wars arcade game, specifically the sit-down cab, will always
Where was that for you? You remember?
it was a place called Fun. It was an arcade called Fun and Games in the Eastern Hills Mall.
Okay.
And when I'd go out and run errands with my dad, that was one that when I was young, like a kid, like 4, 5, 6. That was the mall he would regularly go to, and I remember being like one of my earliest memories with games. Period. But I remember my dad taking me to that arcade, and we'd always play a couple rounds of that. I'd sit in his lap and basically put my hands on the controller and he would play the game. So, I mean, that's one of the first games I remember playing, and I'll never not think of that arcade when I see it. And another one is actually, because of the same arcade and because of the same stuff, Duck Hunt. They had a Duck Hunt cab there. They had the versus
VS?
duck hunt. Yep.
With the big ass gun, the heavy ass gun.
Yeah, with the huge heavy gun. Because I
great.
specifically remember my dad being like, "Go ahead, shoot the duck," and like not being able to.
It was too heavy for Ian's little hand.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fucking.
hands.
It was a heavy fucking gun.
It was a cannon, hand cannon.
So I agree. Arcade games, where you played them and where you were, the surrounding tends to get cemented in your head more so.
The
than
sounds,
console.
and I can remember how dark it was in the room, like in Spaceport. At what we're saying, I remember how it felt.
And I think it's funny too because of arcades. I don't know about you, but it's easy to get like certain games. It's easy to like link certain games memory wise. Like I can't think of Mortal Kombat 2 without thinking of Teed Off, the pinball machine, because where I would always go with my friends so they would play Mortal Kombat 2 was directly next to a teed off pinball machine, and the fucking gopher would chatter. So I always remember that. X-Men Arcade I always kind of think about with Mortal Kombat 1 because I played both of those for the first time at a birthday party. Something along those lines.
My Mortal Kombat 1 was at a drugstore. God, it was like I think it was like a CVS. Some of the CVS's even like they'd have arcade machines in. I think it was, yeah. I don't think it was a mom and pop. In the back corner, like towards like to the left was like going to like the warehouse section, like the back room. They had NBA Jam next to Mortal Kombat. And that was the first time I played. Definitely the first time I played NBA Jam was there. Like that was the first time I ever saw it. So I'd go over with my cousins. We go over and we play that like every other weekend. We would just sit there for a couple hours and play a few games of NBA Jam. So that's like, yeah, it's like 93. Yeah, I can tell you where, probably most arcade games, I can tell you exactly where I was the first time I played them. Commando was at the Weber Center Mall as well. I got my ass kicked as Commando as a kid. But to me, that sort of stood out. I'm not sure why. I guess I like G.I. Joe. So it had the cool cabinet. It was the camouflage. And that's probably the reason why it was my first PC game my dad bought. Because I got my ass kicked. I couldn't get past the first level as a kid.
That was the first time I ever played Commando was the Tandy version. I'm pretty sure.
The Tandy version? That's probably better than the XT. The Commodore one had really good music.
I'm trying to
but
remember.
The XT one didn't. Yeah, now I'm getting the feels for for getting an arcade together somewhere. Because there's something about arcades. That's probably the reason why arcades have come back strong. Is that people want the communal feeling of being around the other games too. It's like it's like a party. The games are friends hanging out together, right? No, is that kind of weird? I don't know. Right. Thanks for the Q&A, of course, as always.